Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever it is for you. Welcome back to another Division 2 video. Today I'm gonna show you my clutch build. Yes, we're trying to bring clutch back because of course that extra health has been introduced to the game. So why not utilize it? I've been always a very big advocate against health because what does it do for us in the game? But overall, the health is kind of in the same pool as armor. Talking PvE then, of course. As the enemies, the NPCs, don't really have damage to armor, damage to health, like we have, for example, in PvP. So in PvE, the health and the armor are kinda the same, so we can get into a little bit more survivability while not losing any damage, or at least not losing any red cores. This build is a lot of fun to play around with, and I try to utilize as much health and as much survivability as possible so we can have a bunch of fun running around. The only problem is that Hunter's Fury is kind of the gear set, brand set, built to run for SMGs. So we are not hitting that hard within the damages itself, but it gives us a lot of survivability. So is it worth it to go for a clutch build? As you can see in the background, you have a bunch of survivability, even in countdowns. Yes, I normally don't show any countdown gameplay because we all know you get boosted, but this is just me fighting against a whole team of enemies at the countdown by myself just before the extraction. So that's why I showed you this a little bit, that it has survivability even fighting full groups. But without further ado, let's dive right in and let me showcase the build, and let's see if we can bring Clutch, aka Berserk, back to the game. And there we are. Let's start with our specialization. We are using the firewall specialization, and there are a couple of reasons why you want to use a firewall specialization on this particular build. It will give us 30% health on kill. It will give us a 10% extra critical hit damage mod underneath our gun. It will give us that striker shield that will give us some more damage output. But as you saw in the gameplay, I didn't use that striker shield that much because I still like to run around with a build and only with that build. So not using that much of other skills to protect me or anything else. But that striker shield definitely comes in clutch. Not only giving you more survivability, but also giving you a huge damage output as well. And that's what this build is kinda missing. You can hit up to that 5 to maybe 600k a crit shot on the head. But we of course want to get close to that million. And that's why we're using the firewall specialization. And don't forget to stack into SMG damage. Talking about SMG damage, let's jump over to my guns. Starting with my main gun, and this is the Dark Winner. 102.3k total damage, an RPM of 200, a mag of 45, and of course damage to target out of cover rolled on this. And it comes with the expertise of level 23, so an extra 23% weapon damage. Why the Dark Winner? Because this comes with Perfect Killer. Killing an enemy with a critical hit grants 50% critical hit damage for 10 seconds. And this is what you want to go for, as we're missing a little bit of damage. The Perfect Killer comes in clutch. Take somebody out and we can gain up to that almost 210% critical hit damage. And that's why there is a lot of survivability and you can still shred through enemies. For the PvP side of things, I would go for the Tactical Vector. This is on 97.3k total damage, an RPM of 200, but it only has a mag of 39. Of course, again, damage to target out of cover on there. This is a little bit lower on the total damage because of that Dark Winner is on level 23. this is higher on the base damage than the Dark Winner. So if you put this on expertise level 23, it will have a lot more total damage than the Dark Winner has. And you kinda wanna go for then a damage talent, and I chose to go for Optimist. Weapon damage is increased by 3% for every 10% ammo missing from the magazine. This will help out a lot more than Killer, because you don't take out that many enemies within PvP, of course. And then, of course, it's still the question, will this go with PvP? We also tried it out with the Ouroboros, because this, of course, comes with 102.7k total damage, an RPM of 1485, and a mag of 50. So we're gaining 5 more bullets in the mag. We're gaining 285 more RPM. And because how the way clutch works, you want to have that high RPM. And that's why I kind of chose for the Dark Winner to have a little bit more damage output, because we all know that Ouroboros doesn't have a damage talent. Then for my pistol, you can go for whatever you think is necessary to make sure to get those proficiency ranks up, that you don't have to donate materials and or duplicates. But what you also could do is go for the busy little bee. And why the busy little bee? Because every time that you shoot somebody, so each stack to a different target will give you 1 stack up to 10 stacks. And each stacks will give you 20% weapon damage increase. Stacks will activate once the agent switches weapons and will last for 10 seconds. So what you could do is run in, tap 2 or 3 enemies, you will gain that 40 to 60% extra weapon damage, walk up on that enemy and then switch over to your gun. Why switching over close to when you want to do damage? Because we only have 10 seconds for this extra weapon damage output. So tap a few people, walk up to that enemy, switch over to your Dark Winner and start beaming. You're gaining an extra 60% weapon damage. What will do a lot for you. It's only for 10 seconds, so it will only be for that first part, or maybe even fighting a boss like that. That will definitely help you out. But if you don't want to go for that busy little bee, like I said, go for a pistol that you don't have proficient yet. And then let's jump over to the full overview of the build, and this is the build. And yes, you see a lot of blues on there, and that is health. Yes, prime build in health. I am a very big hater of health, because what does it do in the game? But like I explained in the intro, it is exactly the same as armor within PvE. So in this way, we have almost 2.1 million survivability, so a combination of armor and health. And so that's why this build could be doing good. Why this build? Because, of course, as Clutch, we're trying to build that Clutch Berserk build from all the way back at the start of the game. It was such a great build, and that's why we're trying to make now. So we are going with the Seska's Devil's Due. This is the named Seska, and why? Because this comes with perfect clutch. If you are below 20% armor, critical hits repair 2.5% missing armor. Kills allow you to repair up to 100% armor for 4 to 10 seconds based on the number of core attributes. So the more core attributes you have, so the max of 6, that will be 4 seconds until your full armor will be back. And it should be that way. I feel like it's a little bit broken and it isn't working as intended, because I never get my full armor back. Maybe if I go out of cover, but then usually your armor always comes back. So it's a little bit strange how that second part works, but we're doing it for that first part. If you are below 20% armor, critical hits repair 2.5% missing armor. That's mainly what we are focusing on. I chose to go for health, critical hit damage and critical hit damage mod on there, and then of course that weapon damage. Why Seska? We were running around with a 3-piece, not only for this Devil's Due, but that 3-piece will activate 90% health. This is one of the boosted brand set bonuses in TU20. So we're gaining critical hit chance, hazard protection, and then that health. Jumping over to my other pieces of Seska, it's my chest piece. I went for critical hit chance, critical hit damage mod on there. And then this is the second piece to activate that hazard protection, and I got it with Obliterate. Critical hits increase the total weapon damage by 1% for 10 seconds, stacks up 25 times. This got boosted with TU20 as well. Instead of 5, now it's 10 seconds. So it's a lot easier to keep up Obliterate and gain that 25% weapon damage almost all the time. Then for my last piece, I went for my knee pads. This has health on there as well, same as with critical hit damage, and then of course weapon damage. What will activate are 90% health. Then jumping over to my one piece that is not fully optimized because I ran out of mats. I've been working towards this build for a couple of weeks now, talking to my man Tutok, trying to get a few things going. So there are a few very different ways to run this build. And let me know in the comments down below if you have this build already and how do you run it. But we will go into a few alternative setups a little bit later. So this is 511. Yes, we chose to go for the most trash brand set in the game, 511. And why? Because we are gaining an extra 30% health as the first brand set bonus. Again, we chose to go for health and critical hit damage, and you need to find it this way so you can roll that armor core away for weapon damage. You can also try to farm it with the full critical hit chance and critical hit damage on there, or weapon handling. And why do I have health and weapon handling on there? Because we're already close to that cap of critical hit chance. If we build more into critical hit chance, we will overcap, and you never ever want to overcap your critical hit chances. So that's why you can choose for health, weapon handling, or even headshot damage if you want even a little bit more damage and you think that you have enough survivability. But for this build, we chose to go for a little bit extra health. And I ran out of all the mats. I don't have any optimization points anymore, so this is what we need to rock with. So it's 14.7k health, and that can go up to 18 and a little bit, pushing us almost to that 1.3 million health if this is fully optimized. Then jumping over to my last pieces, and I chose to go for Guard. Why Guard? Because this gives us 5% total armor, and again that 60% health. You can also go for the new set Palisade. Palisade will give you 10% armor on kill and then 60% health, so it can give you even more survivability. But I feel like that can screw up with our clutch, because clutch reads: if you are below 20% armor, critical hits repair 2.5% missing armor. So I feel like that if we would go for Palisade instead of the Guard, then it would screw a little bit with our clutch, that we will gain too much armor, that we will go over that 20%, and then clutch doesn't work anymore. And that's why I chose to go for Guard. Again, I chose to go for health, critical hit damage. Find it this way so you can roll that weapon damage over that. Or of course you can go for a full red one. I have it somewhere here. Here you go. I found it with critical hit chance and critical hit damage. So you can roll that weapon damage. But again, do not overcap within your critical hit chances. Then better go for weapon handling, headshot damage, or of course health to boost your survivability. Then my second piece is the gloves. Again, this will activate our 2-piece brand set bonus of 60% health. Found it with health and critical hit damage, so I could roll that armor core away for weapon damage. And that's pretty much the whole overview of the build, and this will give you above that 1.2 million health and then around 760k armor. So we are around that 2 million survivability with that armor and health combined. It's a little bit strange to fight when your armor explodes, because everybody is a division agent and will dive into cover to pop a medkit because you are afraid that your armor will explode. but this is how this build works. Another thing of our specialization, by the way, that I forgot to mention, when our armor explodes, you will set people on fire in a radius of 5 meters around you. And that comes in clutch as well, because then you can take out people, because they will not be focused on you for a couple of seconds, because they are on fire. Another survivability asset from our specialization. Then jumping over to our skills, we're using that revive hive because of course we are still running around with a solo build or with a clutch build that you kinda wanna go into that health so you can go down. This is a no-brainer, especially after TU20 update. This will pick you up in 3 seconds instead of that 9 seconds. It is a lot faster and one of the best quality of life changes that they did with TU20. Then next to that, you can choose to go for your shield. Because we're running around with that firewall specialization, go for the firewall shield, the striker. Why? Because this will give us an extra damage per enemy in front of us of 11%. So this will give you even more damage output and then of course survivability, because the health of this shield is almost 1.4 million armor. So if you are close to death, pop that shield, beam 2-3 people down, you are fully back on your health again, and you have a little bit of armor back, and you can pop that shield away again. Like you saw in the intro and in all the gameplay footage, that I don't really use that shield or any other skills whatsoever, because I like to play without the skills. I don't want to be skill reliant on any build, except for of course a skill build. But for this build, I wanna utilize this build without a skill. But that shield will come in clutch, especially if you almost go down. What you also can go for is that defender drone. Defender drone will come in clutch as well. Pop that defender drone when your armor breaks and then just keep beaming down. That clutch will give you your armor back. And of course, if you take somebody out, that hit health will come back for that 30% health on kill from our specialization. I chose to go for 6% total extra damage output on my shield and 5% shield health. And for my hive, I went for 10% revive armor repair, 5% range, and 10% health. So let's jump over to the stats real quick. And we have 57% critical hit chance and 163% critical hit damage. You cannot really go higher than this if you want to keep that health. You can lose 2 critical hit chance mods and change it into critical hit damage mods. And then, of course, remove 2 attributes of health and change that to critical hit chance. You will be on 59% critical hit damage and then on 175% critical hit damage. But because we wanna work around that clutch, because we wanna work without as less armor as possible, then you kinda wanna build into health. Like I said, there were a couple of ways how you can build this, so let's jump back to the build and let me show you a few different setups. But overall, the setup that we are now rocking, let me show you again. This is, in my humble opinion, one of the best to run with as for damage. And this is another setup that you can go for, and that is with the Aegis. We have 100 to 150k less health, but this works wonders, especially with that Ouroboros. Then just keep the 3 pieces of Seska, the 511, and then go for the 2 pieces of Aegis. This is the new gear set that is added to the game, and the 2 pieces will give you 70% health. But with Guard, it will give you 60% health, so that is 10% less health. But if you go for Guard, you can go into another attribute and then you can build that into health, what will give you more health damage. And if you want to go for the Aegis, it's a little bit easier to get together, then go for critical hit damage. Again, you have to find it with critical hit damage to roll that armor core away, and then just do the same for your knee pads. Find it with critical hit damage, optimize it, and roll it away for weapon damage. This is another setup that you could go for. And this is another setup that you can try. This is with the Catharsis Mask. And why the Catharsis Mask? This was our initial idea to create that clutch Berserk build, because Berserk back in the day gave us extra damage while we are low on armor. And this kinda does the same with Vicious Cycle Talent. Taking damage builds a stack of a cap of 30. Each stack grants 1% weapon damage. Taking damage as max stacks triggers a purge, removing all stacks and status effects, and then dropping a healing cloud which restores 5% armor over 10 seconds to all allies in that cloud. So next to that, it gives you a little bit more weapon damage. It also gives you some extra survivability. When it purges, it will be put on the ground and then you will heal yourself. The only problem is then that we have that incoming repairs, armor regeneration on there, and that armor core. So in theory, we're only gaining 15% extra weapon damage. So after 15 stacks, we will do a little bit more damage. But I saw, especially because we're losing a little bit of critical hit damage on this build, that around 25 stacks it becomes better than a full red build. But then it's only 6 more hits and you are gone with all of your extra damages. And that's why this is, yes, it is viable, but no, I don't think that you should build towards this with the Catharsis, as that first build I showed you will give you the most damage output. And if we look over to our health, it's 1 million health right now. So we lost around 200 to 250k health. So that's another survivability object that we lost just to add that Catharsis, hoping to get some extra damage output. So that first build I showed you, and I will equip it real quick, this is still hands down the best one to go for. Of course, that Catharsis one can also hold an extra health, so you can pull yourself again to that 1.1 million, but then again, you have to lose a critical hit damage mod to get that crit chance back, because on the other build we were at 58% critical hit chance and 158% critical hit damage. That will not be raised on that build, but it will be raised of course with that perfect killer. So those are a few different setups of this build. I wanted to just showcase you this full clutch build. So now let's talk about it. Is it viable? The yes or the no? I think yes, it is viable, but it doesn't do as much damage as other builds out there. So then the question is, with a full red build, you have a lot of survivability as well, because if you beam those down, they will stagger and not shoot you. So a full red build with the most damage possible is a survivability on itself as well. And then we can hit up to that 1.2, 1.3, even 1.5 million a crit shot on the head. While we can only do to 500 to maybe 600k crit shot on the head. So we're losing a 1 million damage per crit shot. And that's quite a lot. Yes, this build holds up. Yes, you can run through missions like you saw me doing with Lincoln. Yes, you can go into the open world. But if the people are around you, because you kinda wanna get close to the enemies, and you will get grouped up, they're shooting you from all sides. Yes, you can stay alive, but it is a lot harder. It is a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot of fun because you really have to work for your damage and you really have to work for your survivability. So in that way, no, it's not worth building towards a clutch build because you really really have to work for your survivability and your damage output, while a few other builds, for example that Hunter's Fury, will give you that damage output very, very quickly, and it's easy to stay alive with that build as well. So yeah guys, let me know in the comments down below what you think about this build. I tried to be the first one, but it took me a few weeks to build this build, and the last couple of days I've been talking to my boy TU20, trying to figure out what the best setup was, and I ran out of materials. I don't have any holster, knee pads, mask, glove materials anymore. I crafted so much, I optimized so much, and that's why my holster is not on the max optimization, because I'm empty. I tried to get it to you, but now it was time to release this build before anybody else does that, of course. But yeah, we kinda already know a creator out there that is making 10 to 15,000 videos a day, so we can't really keep up. He probably already made this build, but like you know, I don't really look at any other Division content creators. I like to support my friends, but then I just click the video, like the video, and get away again, because you don't want to put ideas in your head from somebody else. This is my own build, this is my own creation, and you don't really want to focus on other creators. But that's it. Again, let me know in the comments down below what you think about this build. Are you gonna build this build, or do you even have a better version? I still hope that Berserk will come back in like an exotic chest piece on one of the new brand sets, so we can have a perfect Berserk as well, or of course in combination with a gear set. That will be dope as well. And that's enough for today. Thank you very much for sticking until the end. Like the video if you liked the video or helped you out in any way or form, and if you're new here and or you want to be updated about the Division 2, the Division universe, and the future Division 3, because it is announced, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well, and I will see you in the next one. PurePrime out!